Let's talk about the sequence that's like about 45 minutes into the film when Sienna and Diego's characters, they go back in time, they're going to see the fortune teller, and then they get into the fight, and Diego is sort of saying like, you can't prove that this happened, and then they go out into the street and they get into an even bigger fight, and then it transitions to the lights outside of LACMA.
I think the first thing to mention is the idea of Adrian and Mateo sort of narrativizing their own memories and sort of negotiating them with each other happened really on in the development of the script. I think that it's actually sort of a normal thing to do in the theater world, where you turn aside to the audience and sort of, say what you're thinking or what's happening for you that you might not say to all the characters on the stage. I think the other part of it is early on in my career, someone told me that films are really for external adventures and internal stories should really be reserved for novels. And I thought that was insane. It seemed to me like film is the perfect way to find a way to externalize someone's internal journey and to get into somebody's head and to see what that person was, sort of how they were clicking. So in the scene here, Adrian and Mateo, this is sort of where Adrian is taking back the narrative. Mateo has told her, I'm going to make sense of your head. And he's sort of trying to put everything in order. And her head is not in order. And so her memories, she starts sort of diving from memory to memory to memory. And I think the challenge once we got it on its feet was, how the hell do you do that? And I think our week of rehearsal was really key to that. Don't you think, guys, in terms of like marking those moments where you were turning to one another and then there was like a click or a pause or a blink, just some moment of transition from we're in a scene where we're living in this past memory and now we're talking about what we think about that past memory.
It was one of those things that you read in a script and you're like, oh, I love this. I think in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, they sort of play with the same thing where you're in a scene and then they're kind of narrating the experience from the past or future or whatever it may be. And it's the kind of thing that when I was reading the script that I loved. And then in reality, when it came to doing it, I remember me and Diego were like, how do you sell this? How do you kind of, you're in one moment and then those shifts, those kind of hairpin turns were so complex, but it required a lot of faith and a lot of it's just not normal life. It was so, it's so sort of against your instinct to do that, but so successful in the edit, obviously.
I think the reference Tara made is important, because I did read the script and I was thinking of theater and I was thinking how many times in theater you've done that. But obviously it's very different to act in theater than on a film set. And I guess I didn't realize the size of the challenge we had in front of us when I read the script. I did too, like, enjoyed it, and I said, this is perfect. And then when I started breaking up into pieces the whole thing, it was like, this makes no sense. How can you do that? And I guess it's because it's not a narration to me. It's just like you're living two different realities in two different levels, but both have a very specific intention. And I guess when you read it, you think you're living in one reality till you find out, no, I'm supposed to play two, and I'm supposed to be clear in those two intentions, and they can't conflict with each other.
So often I feel like in movies, whether it's something like Blue Valentine, which deals with memory and it deals with like the past and the present, but you're telling those stories separately. What I loved about this was the interweaving of that narrative where you're telling those two time periods in the same scene. It's really, to me, was like, it's so dramatic and engaging to watch.
I love the negotiation as well between the two of them and how the rival kind of memories of what actually happens in a moment, which is I think a conversation that everybody has had with their partner at some point. It was like, no, you didn't do that, you did this. And everybody's so convinced of their own reality. To play those out with each other in real time was such an interesting thing to explore.
I think it's such a testament to you both how we did have such specific plans, right? Like, oh, the camera has to be here so we can wipe this way, or, I need you to look this way so that we can motivate this transition. And often I think, it was such deeply emotional, big lifting that you were doing. So to have that on top of it, and that you navigated it so effortlessly. I mean, it was just a real testament to the professionalism that, you know, it wasn't just getting lost in a scene. It was like getting lost in a scene, giving these incredible emotional performances, and then also letting me like chase a camera around you to get into this transition that we needed to let the camera also tell part of that story. And it was a huge challenge that you really stepped up to in a beautiful way.
And it's a challenge for audiences. I mean, as it is a challenge for us, because to maintain the emotional connection with characters that are jumping in and out, you know, and not to become cynical about the emotion, you know, it's not an easy one. And there was, from my side, always fear to fall into that. And when you see it happening, which there's also some kind of magic going on that you can't say you controlled all of that. I mean, and when I saw it with an audience for the first time, it was such a relief because it was so risky, I think.
And I think especially, you know, talking about this sort of internalization to try to get into the head of a character who's in a concussed state, and whether that's like, you know, I wanted to parallel the sense of a concussion with the psychosis of grief, and how those two things are so similar, and what our brains do to protect us from what we can't handle. But being able to let go as an audience member and trust that the movie is taking you somewhere that might be a little uncomfortable, but is taking you somewhere good, ultimately. I think that's sort of the key for this movie. It is really a ride. You know, the more you resist, it's sort of the message of the movie. It's like the more you resist, the less it works, you know.
It's very complicated to keep it all straight. And so it required a very concentrated prep with Tara, really talking through the script and where she envisioned it all, since she was the creator, where she envisioned all those sequences belong and where all those lines belonged, and where the emotion was coming from. And I think that concentrated period was what we really benefited from, because when we got on set, even there was always a question, you know, everybody had questions about, wait, where is this and when is this? And the same thing with the actors, obviously. But luckily we had Katie and Carolina there too, who were mind melding with Tara and really understood the sequences.
We had to create like a really cool team to pull all this off. I'm really into like, you know, explorations of consciousness and perception, and I'm really into like, you know, talking about philosophy with my collaborators, and I think this project, like, we all got to do a lot of that. And so there was a lot of really difficult things that we were up against, of like, you know, how to make some of these transitions happen. And instead of like having real clear cut ideas of how they would happen, we approached it all super organically. And I think through like having a lot of these conversations, my dear friend is the VFX supervisor on it, and with Carolina and with Tara, like we would just kind of brainstorm like 7 different ways to achieve the transition. And so like it's kind of, with this movie, I felt like because we had such a playful and trusting creative team, we could start with chaos and like reach something really beautiful together. You know, I thought that was a really powerful way to deal with those transitions.
And I mean, Sammy was talking about the team and gathering the team. That was so important as well with my team, the camera team, because they were keeping like reports on like the speed of a pen from one scene to another. And we had like this long like tech sheet that basically had all the information. And then Brian had to recreate the like same little movement, and not having all those toys, like how to make all those big transitions with the tools that we had. I think this sequence in particular, when I remember the first time, you know, or the second time I read the script, there were 2 or 3 sequences. I mean, the car accident for sure. And this was one that I was just like, wow, this is like a big meal, right? And it was one of the things as well that wanted me to do this movie, because how many movies, I mean, I haven't seen movies like this before. And I thought it was just like such a great challenge to be proud of. And I think for all the transition sequences, I mean, this one in particular, because it goes for so many different moments and different locations and different day and night. So like different lighting setups. But I think the most important thing was always to respect the characters, like how they would transition emotionally from one world to another, right? And then the technique, whatever it is, just comes to support that, right? So the audience never feels strict, because it can become like a gimmicky thing because it's cool, right? To do all these like cool transitions and stuff. And Tara wanted to go away from that and really just take the audience in that journey as they were feeling it. And I think that was, you know, an even bigger challenge in that sense, right? Because the technique has to follow that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we talked about the seamlessness of wanting all of the transitions not to be in the way, right? To be like in service of where Adrian was going and where Matteo was going. But, you know, there was like so much, I think when you work with like technical team, key team members, everybody wants to show you what they can do. So it's like, oh, check out this amazing special effects sound I have, or look at how cool we can make this like shadow thing crawl up all over the place. And it was a lot of no, less. Like everything had to feel as grounded as possible, as real as possible, as minimal as possible, so that we were still focused on these characters. It was never meant to be showy.
And I think it is a beautiful balance that this movie achieves, and this sequence is like a big piece of it, is be grounded in reality and how to make it magical, right? That's just, that it's not like just, oh, surrealism, and then we're just like walking from one world to another, like an acid trip, and it's not that, right? You're still like very grounded with the real emotions of Adrienne and what she was going through, right? And the relationship. LACMA in that sense plays a huge part of it, because it does make it very magical, and it's also like LA, it is a character in a movie, you know, and it was always important for Tara, right? And to start above, it's not usually what you see, right, in the pictures of the installation at LACMA, right? It's usually from the ground, so it does give this, I don't know, it's like it lifts, right? It gives air and like a different sensation.
And I remember, if I recall, that was sort of the last shot of the night, right? We went and we didn't think we were going to make it. We didn't think we were going to be able to get that shot.
It was like,
and I remember just Tara feeling really like it was a very important shot to have and get this perspective that nobody else got of that light installation. Really be, you know, come at it from a different point of view. And it really helps the sequence, makes the sequence. And I'm glad we were able to get it. I know we were sort of up against time with LACMA, with, you know, our day, et cetera.
Yeah. That, and also though, like that LACMA and Artist Rights Society, like I learned dealing with them, like if you cry a little, like if you just cry a little bit, like people will help you, you know?
With the production design, we used Tara's house, which felt like it was really important, and to use LACMA because that's a place that Tara, like, you know, has spent a lot of time, and that these places were very personal. And I felt that we were all going on this journey of revisiting this traumatic situation with her, and so to be her creative army that could kind of come in and relive this moment with her and experience the confusion firsthand with her, and realize that like through chaos we could achieve something that like is unique.
Yeah, I think the process all along the way, we would joke, you have to sort of get like into that concussed state, into the wander darkly mindset, which we all were sort of on set, in this like kind of a little bit untethered feeling. And that was sort of where each member of the team had to come with me. Just was like a process of, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And trying to slowly but surely explain it.
We've gotten some feedback recently. Some women have been like, oh, I really loved the movie. It reminds me of like a marriage story from like a female perspective. And Tara sort of surround herself with a bunch of women that maybe do occupy a space of not just like occupying femininity, but a great mix of femininity and masculinity. And it does seem to have sort of made its way through the film and touching audiences. Not that it's only touching women audiences, but that audiences are saying they can feel that it's through the sort of point of view of a kind of female lens, which I do think is interesting, because I don't think that there are a lot of movies that you can point to. Like even when you make the reference of Eternal Sunshine or some of the other movies, they actually are distinctly from a male point of view, and this is not that.
This movie falls into that category of, you know, why any of us are drawn to making certain kinds of movies is that, you know, what makes it unique on the page is feeling like, I haven't seen this before. This feels like a risk. And that to me, like some of my favorite movies that I've been involved in or that I've watched and you know, are the ones where you feel like, gosh, I wonder how the heck this ever got like greenlit, who decided to make this movie. And I feel like it's, again, some of my best experiences have been like this one. They've been looking at a script and feeling like, I believe this can be something special, but it's such a risk because you just don't know if it's going to actually work. And then seeing it work and then getting to have that experience with the audience and knowing that everybody achieved what was set out it's like the best feeling and the reason to make, for me, the reason to make movies.